Welcome to Lesson 8. In this lesson, we will have a look at ERC20 token standard. The ERC20 token standard simply describes the functions and events that an Ethereum token contract has to implement. So if you are familiar with Java, for example, and know what an interface is, ERC20 token standard is essentially just that, an interface that you have to implement so that the token you create becomes an ERC20 compliant token. In other words, you have to implement all the functions that are described in ERC20 token standard interface and make them visible to the public. This is what your token users will interact with, and that is what essentially makes a token. The reason this standard exists is so that every token that implements this standard follows the same naming convention, and by doing so makes it easy for developers to interact with different coins. It also makes it easier for wallets to handle different coins, as they know that once a token is ERC20 compliant, it will follow certain convention and thus will behave in predictable ways. Now let's have a look at the ERC20 token standard interface and the functions and events that need to be implemented so that the token becomes ERC20 compliant. So the first function that needs to be implemented is the token supply, which simply returns the total token supply in circulation. Then we have a balance of function, which accepts an address of an owner of a certain wallet and returns the balance of that owner. Then we have a transfer function, which accepts an address and a value and returns whether the transfer to that address of a certain value was successful or not. Then we have a transfer from function where we transfer funds from a given address to another address of a given value, and then we also return whether the transaction was successful or not. Then we have this another interesting function, approve, which allows a spender, which is the first parameter here, to withdraw from an account multiple times up to the value amount which was passed as the second parameter. If this function is called again, it overwrites the current allowance with new value, and then we return whether the transaction should be approved or not by returning this success boolean. The final function to implement is allowance, which returns the amount which spender is still allowed to withdraw from owner. Then we have two events that we need to implement, and the first one is triggered when tokens are transferred, and the parameters that we have is the address which called this transfer, and then 2 is the address to which the tokens were transferred to, and the value is the amount which was sent. And then the final event is approval, which is triggered whenever approve is called, and it accepts 3 parameters, so owner of the address of which the transaction was approved on, and then the spender which has been allowed to spend that money, and then value is the amount which has been approved to be spent. So this is it. As you can see, it's not a really big, long interface and not that many functions and events that need to be implemented. In the next lesson, we will do just that, implement all these functions and events and make our own ERC20 compliant token. See you there.